Have you ever sat across from someone and felt that subtle shift in the air? They're smiling, saying all the right things, but something feels off. Not loud, not obvious, just unsettling. You can't explain it, but deep down, some part of you whispers, something isn't right. In our world, polished, filtered, and fast-moving, we're taught to focus on appearances. We're trained to be polite, to give people the benefit of the doubt, to overlook that gut feeling in favor of what seems socially acceptable. But what if that gut feeling is your last line of defense? The Stoics believe that wisdom begins with perception, not just seeing, but truly seeing, looking past the surface, recognizing patterns, and most of all, refusing to lie to yourself about what you already know. Because the truth is this: not everyone in your life wants the best for you. Some people wear kindness like a costume, some use charm like a blade, and some take pleasure in your confusion, your silence, your self-doubt. And if you're not careful, you'll find yourself drained, confused, and wondering how you ended up so far from yourself. But this isn't about paranoia, it's about clarity. Stoicism doesn't ask us to hate, to blame, or to fear. It asks us to see clearly, act with reason, and protect our peace without apology. In this episode, we're going to uncover 5 types of toxic people that hide in plain sight. Not caricatures of evil, but the quiet, cunning patterns that slowly erode your spirit. And more importantly, you'll learn how to respond with stoic strength, not with drama, not with revenge, but with calm, firm boundaries, and the kind of self-respect that cannot be shaken. If you're new here, welcome. This is True Stoic Way, a space for clarity, resilience, and wisdom in a world that often rewards chaos. If that resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe. Not for me, but for the quiet voice inside you that's tired of pretending things are okay when they're not. This journey isn't about judging others, it's about honoring yourself. So take a breath, settle in. Let's start with the first mask people often wear, the one that feels warm at first, safe, even addictive, but over time reveals something far colder beneath. Sign 1, the charming illusionist. They walk into the room and suddenly the atmosphere shifts. Eyes follow them, smiles spread. Even the most reserved people lean in just a little closer. They know your name, even if you've only met once. They remember a detail from 3 months ago, a comment you made in passing about your dog, your dream, your mother's birthday. It feels effortless, genuine, like being seen for the first time in a long time. They laugh at your jokes before you finish them. They compliment you, not too much, just enough. And when they speak to you, it's like no one else in the world matters. You feel warm, safe, special. But here's the question Stoicism teaches us to ask: is it real? Because the truth is, not all charm is connection, and not all warmth comes from a good heart. The Stoics warned us about appearances. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not be deceived by what the eye sees or the ear hears. Character is revealed in action, repeated over time." The charming illusionist isn't always malicious, but they are always strategic. Their charm isn't given freely. It's calculated, offered when there's an audience, a benefit, a reason, and when there's nothing left to gain, they vanish, or worse, they twist the story so that you feel guilty for ever trusting them. Let me tell you a story. You're at a dinner party. A colleague, let's call her Olivia, is the star of the evening. She's elegant, effortlessly funny. Everyone hangs on her every word. She turns to you and says something that makes the whole table laugh. You're flattered, grateful. She makes you feel like you belong. Later in the night, you mention something personal, a struggle you've been having. Olivia smiles politely. She nods, then quickly redirects the conversation. The warmth is gone. Next week at work, you ask for her help on a project. She says she's swamped, but 2 days later, she's in someone else's office, offering to do that exact same task. No audience, no spotlight, no favor, just silence. This is what the charming illusionist does. They mirror your values, your interests, your emotions. Not because they share them, but because they know it earns them trust. And once trust is earned, they treat it like currency. Spend it, exploit it, then walk away when the account runs dry. You see, Stoicism teaches us not to judge harshly, but to observe wisely. There's nothing wrong with being charismatic, nothing wrong with warmth, but we must ask, what happens when the spotlight dims? Do they still show up? Do they still care when no one's watching? Epictetus put it this way: we are not disturbed by things, but by the view we take of them. And that includes people. When you meet someone magnetic, pause. Appreciate their presence, but hold back your full trust. Observe, not their words, but their patterns. How do they treat the waiter, the receptionist, someone who has nothing to offer them? That is the test. Another sign, when you start to pull away, they notice. Not because they miss you, but because their control is slipping. They may double down, suddenly more attentive, sweeter, more curious. It feels like affection, but in truth, it's maintenance. They're tightening the rope just before it snaps. The worst part? They can make you doubt your intuition. Because when someone is charming, we want to believe they're good. We feel foolish admitting otherwise. We say to ourselves, they were just having a bad day. Maybe I expected too much. I'm probably being too sensitive. But sensitivity is not weakness, it's data. And your instincts are often wiser than your thoughts. The Stoics weren't heartless. They felt deeply, but they didn't cling. They knew that discernment protects peace. So how do you deal with a charming illusionist? You don't need confrontation. You don't need revenge. You don't even need closure. You need distance and clarity. You observe, you adjust, and most of all, you stop giving energy to someone who only shows up when there's something to gain. Let me be clear, you deserve real connection. You deserve warmth that doesn't disappear when the spotlight fades. And anyone who makes you feel guilty for expecting consistency was never consistent to begin with. There's a Stoic question worth carrying with you. Is this person helping me grow in virtue? If the answer is no, not through words, but through repeated action, then it's time to let go of the illusion and protect your reality, because your peace of mind is worth more than their performance. Next, we'll talk about the second type of person to watch for. They don't pretend to care, they simply don't. And their silence, their indifference, their emotional coldness isn't an accident, it's a sign. Let's talk about the empathy void. Sign 2, the empathy void. There's a kind of silence that's louder than any insult. It doesn't come with shouting, it doesn't come with cruelty, it comes with indifference. You share something joyful, a win at work, a new relationship, a moment of peace in your chaotic life, and they glance at you and nod, flat, unmoved. No celebration, no warmth. Just a change of subject, as if your happiness inconvenienced them. Later you're struggling, you open up. You don't need a solution, just a moment of human understanding. And they smirk, dismiss it, minimize your pain. Or worse, compare it to their own, as if your sorrow is only valid if it's bigger than theirs. You walk away feeling smaller, embarrassed for even sharing, questioning whether you're just too much. But you're not. You're not too much. You're just not being met with empathy. The Stoics never asked us to crave validation, but they understood the importance of community and the quiet power of being seen. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee." We are not meant to go through life entirely alone. We were designed for connection, genuine connection. But not everyone is capable of it. Some people aren't missing empathy because they're broken. They're missing it because they've chosen not to care. This is the empathy void. At first they seem neutral, detached, private. You assume they're just quiet, maybe introverted, but time reveals a pattern. They never ask how you're doing. They forget your birthday. They avoid eye contact when something real is said. When others suffer, they joke. When others shine, they retreat. They don't get angry. They don't get emotional. They just disappear, emotionally, spiritually, humanly. And when they do respond, it feels more like a transaction than a connection. A dry that sucks when you're grieving, a flat cool when you're overjoyed. And every time you walk away, you feel emptier than when you arrived. But here's what makes it harder. They rarely do anything wrong. They don't insult you. They don't yell. They don't betray. They just don't show up. And because they haven't harmed you directly, you hesitate to call it what it is: emotional neglect. Imagine this. You've been working on a project for weeks. Long hours, high stakes. You pull through, deliver something meaningful. You're proud. You share it. And they reply with, "Nice. Anyway, did you see the game last night?" They didn't forget. They just didn't care. Or maybe you're going through something hard, really hard. A loss, a health scare, a season of self-doubt. You hint at it. Or maybe you say it outright. They blink, pause, and shift the conversation back to themselves. No space, no softness, just a vacuum. That is what it's like to stand in the empathy void. The Stoics taught us not to expect others to behave as we wish, but they also taught us to protect our energy. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those whom you yourself can improve." The process is mutual. If someone consistently shrinks your spirit, if you feel worse after talking to them, not once, not occasionally, but every time, that's not chemistry, that's clarity. One of the more subtle signs of an empathy void is their discomfort with your joy. It's easy to notice who ignores your pain. It's harder to notice who ignores your light. They flinch when you win. They don't show up when you succeed. They change the subject, make sarcastic remarks, or worse, they compete. They can't celebrate you because your happiness highlights their emptiness. Stoicism isn't about hardening yourself against emotion. It's about recognizing which emotions deserve your attention. And when someone consistently dismisses, deflects, or drains you, the wise thing is to step back, not in anger, not in punishment, but in peace. Epictetus reminds us, "You are not a vessel to be drained by others. You are a fire to be kindled." So ask yourself, do I leave this person feeling more alive or more invisible? If the answer is the latter, you don't owe them explanation. You owe yourself protection. Now here's what the empathy void often makes you believe: that you're too sensitive, that your joy is annoying, that your pain is dramatic, that needing connection is weakness. But none of that is true. In reality, their lack of empathy is not a mirror of your worth. It's a reflection of their own limitation. They cannot offer what they never cultivated. And it's not your job to water a garden that was never planted. So what do? You stop explaining yourself. You stop shrinking your feelings to fit their comfort. You stop expecting softness from someone who only offers stone. And most of all, you surround yourself with warmth. People who listen, people who celebrate with you, people who sit with your pain, not fix it, not avoid it, just sit. That is real connection. That is emotional wealth. And if you don't have it now, don't worry. Stoicism teaches us that everything begins within. Be the person you wish you had. Live the empathy you were denied. And when you start honoring your own needs, you'll find yourself attracting those who do the same. One more thing. Sometimes the most dangerous empathy void doesn't come from a stranger or a colleague or even a partner. Sometimes it comes from within, from the way you speak to yourself. Ignore your own pain. Minimize your own joy. Tell yourself to toughen up when what you need is care. Marcus Aurelius said, "Be tolerant with others and strict with yourself." But even he did not mean cruelty. Discipline is not the same as emotional starvation. So as you walk through the world, don't just guard against the empathy others fail to give you. Be mindful of the empathy you deny yourself. You deserve to be met, to be heard, to be mirrored in the eyes of someone who truly sees you. And if that hasn't happened yet, start by being that mirror for yourself. Because when you stop settling for emptiness, you begin to attract abundance. Next, we'll meet a different kind of presence. They don't vanish when you're happy. They don't retreat when you're sad. They stay close, they listen, they flatter. But it's not love, it's leverage. Let's talk about the manipulator. Sign 3, the manipulator. At first they admire you, they praise your strengths, notice the details no one else sees, tell you how rare you are, how no one else understands them the way you do. It feels special, it feels sincere, and maybe it is, but only at the start. because over time, something begins to shift. The compliments become quieter. The energy grows colder. The admiration starts to come with conditions. Suddenly, everything you say is off, twisted, reworded, reframed. And you're not sure when it started. You just know that one day you stop trusting your own words. This is what the manipulator does. They don't steal from your wallet. They steal from your clarity, your self-perception, your reality. They don't need to yell. They don't need to threaten. All they need to do is make you doubt yourself a little more each day. At first, it's subtle. They say, "You're too sensitive. You're reading into it." That's not what I meant. You always twist my words. So you start wondering, did I hear them wrong? Am I being dramatic? Maybe it is my fault. And just like that, the fog rolls in, not around them, but around you. Your mind begins to second guess what your heart already knows. The Stoics taught us to guard the mind first. Everything else, possessions, reputation, status, can be taken. But clarity of thought, that's yours to protect. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The manipulator's greatest success is not in hurting you, it's in making you question whether the pain is real. Let's talk about modern life. Maybe you work in a fast-paced office. You deliver, you lead, you innovate, but your manager never sees it. Or worse, they see it and take the credit. You bring up your concerns carefully. They sigh, say you're being petty. That's just how teamwork works. They shrug, but it's not. And deep down, you know it. Still, the guilt creeps in. You start working harder, not for recognition, but to avoid being called difficult. This is manipulation disguised as professionalism. Or maybe it's a relationship. They offer to help with your finances. It's easier this way, they say. I'm just trying to support you. At first, it feels helpful, but soon you notice you have to ask before you spend. Justify small purchases, apologize for every coffee, every haircut, every gift to yourself. You start to feel irresponsible, even though you never were. This isn't support, it's financial control, disguised as care. Or maybe it's friendship. They always come to you when they're in crisis. You listen, you give, you show up. But when you need something, they vanish. Worse, when you set a boundary, they guilt you. I thought we were close. Wow, I would never do that to you. Now you're the selfish one, just for protecting your own energy. This is not friendship. This is emotional debt collection. The Stoics remind us, you don't control others, only how you respond. And when it comes to the manipulator, the response must be grounded in clarity. Not confrontation, not emotion. Clarity, because manipulators thrive in confusion, in guilt, in blurred lines and second chances. They feed on your hesitation. But once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. And when you stop reacting, they lose control. One of the manipulator's favorite tools is flattery. They will praise you, not because they value you, but because they want access. They make you feel chosen, one of a kind, the only one who gets them. But the moment you say no, you're no longer special. You're now cold, ungrateful, selfish. This emotional swing isn't your fault. It's their strategy. And the antidote is Stoic self-worth. Your value isn't found in someone else's opinion of you. It isn't granted by praise, and it isn't erased by rejection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if they don't know who you are." Do you know who you are? That's the question that disarms manipulation. Another tactic, playing the victim. They always need you. There's always a crisis, always a reason they didn't show up, didn't help, didn't keep their word. But if you ever withdraw, even slightly, you're hit with disappointment. I guess you're not who I thought you were. Wow, I thought I could count on you. They don't ask for your time, they demand it, wrapped in emotional pressure. And the moment you resist, they question your character. In Stoic philosophy, this is where boundaries become essential. Not walls, not ultimatums, boundaries. Seneca said, associate with people who are likely to improve you. If someone is only close when they can use you, they are not company. They are custodes, and your energy is not infinite. So what do? You stop explaining. You stop defending. You stop negotiating with someone who already decided your no is unacceptable. And instead you say, quietly, clearly, this no is final. I do not owe you access to my peace. Then you uphold it. Because setting a boundary once is easy. Upholding it when they push back, that's where the Stoic path begins. Let's not romanticize this. Walking away from manipulation is hard, especially when it comes from someone close, someone you wanted to believe in, someone who once made you feel special. But the Stoics didn't teach us to choose comfort. They taught us to choose truth, even when it hurts, even when it costs us the fantasy, especially then. If any part of this feels familiar, you're not alone. The manipulator makes you feel isolated, but you're not. You are simply waking up. And that awakening, as painful as it is your first step back to clarity. If you're finding value in this journey, I invite you to walk it with us. Here on True Stoic Way, we strip away illusion, we replace noise with clarity, and we build strength that isn't loud, but unshakable. So if this resonates, take a moment to subscribe, not because it's trendy, but because you're tired of being shaped by people who don't have your peace in mind. In the end, the manipulator can twist your words. They can tug at your guilt. They can flatter, dismiss, and confuse. But they cannot take away your ability to see clearly, to protect your peace, to walk away with grace. That power is always yours, even now. Next, we meet another kind of control, quieter, colder, more constant. They don't twist your words. They twist your freedom. Let's talk about the controller. Sign 4, the invisible cage builder. They don't raise their voice. They don't slam doors. They don't shout commands or issue threats. Instead, they smile. They suggest. They worry. They just want what's best. And slowly, without ever forcing your hand, they build you a cage. You just don't realize it until you try to leave. This is the nature of control at its most dangerous. Not obvious, but quiet. Not imposed, but installed. Piece by piece, word by word, wrapped in affection, framed as love. The invisible cage builder doesn't want your trust. They want your dependence. And they know the easiest way to keep you is to make sure no one else can reach you. At first, it feels like care. They ask about your friends, but in ways that plant doubt. Don't you think she was acting weird last time? I just don't think he really has your back. It's strange how they only call when they need something, isn't it? Nothing dramatic, nothing direct, just gentle nudges, little shadows cast over your most important relationships. And eventually you pull back. Not because you want to, but because doubt is corrosive, and it only takes a few quiet drops to erode trust. You stop sharing things with your sister. Stop answering texts from your closest friend. Start canceling lunches with that colleague who always lifts your mood. Why? No one told you to, but you feel like you should, and one day you look around and realize you're alone, but not lonely, because someone else is always there, the one who cares, the one who understands, the one who knows the real you, the one who made the rest of the world feel unsafe. Marcus Aurelius warned, what stands in the way becomes the way, if only we choose to see it clearly. But when control looks like love, seeing clearly becomes difficult, because what you're being offered feels comfortable, and what you're being separated from feels distant. It's only when your choices no longer feel like yours that the bars come into view. Let's talk about how this happens in everyday life. You start a new relationship. It's intense in a good way. They want to be around you all the time. They check in constantly. They notice the little things. They make you feel like the center of their world. At first, it's flattering, but then, they seem a little bothered when you go out with friends. They ask who's texting you. They question that old friend's intentions. Not out of jealousy, they say, out of protection. You stop sharing, not because they asked, but because it's easier that way. And slowly, the world shrinks until all you have is them. Or maybe it's a parent or a boss or a mentor. They say things like, "I've sacrificed so much for you. Everything I do is for your future. I just want you to succeed." But every choice you make without them becomes a betrayal. Every opinion you hold is met with subtle disappointment. Every independence feels like a rejection of their love. So you stop choosing for yourself. You wait for their nod. You adjust your tone. You shrink just a little every time. This is how invisible cages are built, not with force, but with fear. Not of punishment, but of disapproval. And the longer you stay, the more you forget where your thoughts end and theirs begin. The Stoics teach us that freedom is internal. No one can enslave your mind unless you surrender it. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And this is what the invisible cage builder steals. Not your time, not your energy, but your inner authority. They don't take control, you hand it over. Because love, when manipulated, becomes compliance. There's a phrase manipulators often use: "You've changed." Not because you've done anything wrong, but because you've begun to think for yourself. Because you've started reclaiming the space they quietly occupied. They call it rebellion. You call it clarity. And that clarity is your key. Sometimes this control looks like financial dependency. They take care of things. They insist on covering the bills. They convince you to quit your job. You're stressed anyway. They're so generous. Until you ask for autonomy. Then, suddenly every dollar becomes a leash. You find yourself asking before every small purchase. You feel guilty for wanting to contribute. You feel helpless when something goes wrong. This is not partnership. This is invisible captivity. Sometimes control hides behind emotional exhaustion. They pick small fights, turn every disagreement into a deep discussion about your loyalty, drain your energy so thoroughly that you no longer have the strength to think beyond the relationship. You stop reaching out to others, not because you're angry, but because you're tired. And isolation doesn't always look like prison. Sometimes it looks like rest, but it's not. It's surrender. So how do you recognize the cage? Simple. Do you feel more yourself when they're not around? Do you feel lighter when you speak to an old friend? Do you second guess your instincts when making decisions around them? Do you catch yourself choosing silence just to keep the peace? That is not peace, that is suppression. And true love never demands your silence. Stoicism offers no illusions about relationships. It does not promise ease, but it demands truth. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here means facing what you've been afraid to name. That what you thought was love might be control. That what you called care was strategy. That what you assumed was safety was a slow undoing of your independence. And once you see it, you cannot stay. Here's what freedom looks like. You say no without fear. You reconnect with those who knew you before the cage. You make choices without seeking permission. You feel your body relax when you're alone, not because you're escaping, but because you're returning to yourself. This isn't easy. The invisible cage builder will resist, not with rage, but with heartbreak. They'll weep, they'll guilt, they'll say, "I was only trying to love you." But love, Sal, never isolates, never erases, never needs you to shrink to fit inside it. If you've felt the bars tightening, you're not imagining it, and you don't need permission to leave. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. Sometimes, it simply means walking away quietly, without apology, towards something that finally feels like peace. If this message resonates, you're not alone. This is True Stoic Way, a place where we reclaim clarity, step out of illusions, and return to the strength that's always been ours. Subscribe if this speaks to something deep in you, not for inspiration, but for alignment. Because the most radical thing you can do in a world of quiet control is to be unmistakably yourself. Next, we confront the final mask. They don't isolate, they don't flatter, they don't even confuse, they lie. Boldly, repeatedly, without shame. And when you confront them, they turn the truth into a weapon. Let's talk about the chronic liar. Sign 5, the professional liar. There's something unsettling about someone who looks you in the eye and lies without flinching. not to protect themselves, not in panic, not once, but over and over, without hesitation, without regret, without even a second thought. These are not slips of the tongue. These are not mistakes. They lie because the truth doesn't serve them. And more than that, because the truth no longer feels real to them. The professional liar doesn't just distort facts. They distort trust, memory, reality. And when you catch them, they don't back down. They don't apologize. They simply change the story, not to make it right, but to make it work for them. You confront them with something clear. You said you were here, but I saw you were somewhere else. You told me that wasn't true, but now you're admitting it is. You promised, and then you denied you ever said it. They pause, then they laugh, dismiss it, blame your memory, blame your mood, blame your need to be right all the time. And suddenly, you're the one on trial. You're the one explaining, defending, doubting. This is not a misunderstanding. This is gaslighting in its purest form, and it's deliberate. The Stoics warned us about illusion. They taught that truth is not loud or decorated. It is quiet, consistent, grounded. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. For it is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone." But a liar does not seek truth. They seek control. The most dangerous liars are not the ones who tell outrageous stories. They're the ones who lie just enough to keep you unsure. They mix truth with distortion, fact with fiction. So skillfully, you stop trusting your own memory. You begin to second-guess timelines, details, intentions. You start writing things down just to stay sane. And even then, you hesitate. Because the liar doesn't just target your facts, they target your self-trust. And that's where the damage begins. Imagine this. You work with someone who constantly shifts blame. One week they forget a deadline and say you never reminded them. Next week they take credit for an idea and claim you misunderstood the agreement. You document, you keep receipts, you show them, but they never budge. They simply move the goalposts, change the conversation, act wounded, turn the room against you. Now you're the problem, not because you're wrong, but because you refuse to forget. Or in a relationship, they lie about where they were, who they texted, what they said, not huge lies, but endless small ones. Each one a thread, until your connection is woven from fiction, and your love becomes a series of investigations. You don't feel loved, you feel like a detective. And even when you find evidence, they make you feel guilty for not just trusting them. But trust is not a blind gift. It's an earned currency, and liars are bankrupt. Seneca warned us, a liar is not believed even when he speaks the truth. Because once trust is broken, what remains is a cracked mirror. You can still see a reflection, but it's no longer whole. Here's what makes it harder. The professional liar is often charming, fun, easy to be around. They're storytellers, entertainers, sometimes even inspirational. But pay attention. When the story always shifts, when the facts blur and bend depending on the audience, when their version of events changes based on who's listening, that's not spontaneity, that's strategy. And the truth doesn't need strategy, it simply stands. So what do? The Stoics wouldn't tell you to rage, to expose, to humiliate. They'd tell you to see. Just see. Clarity is your weapon, not accusation, not revenge, just clarity. Because once you see a liar for what they are, you stop playing the game. You stop chasing apologies. You stop needing proof. You stop handing them the benefit of the doubt they've never earned. Here's what clarity looks like. You no longer argue. You no longer explain. You no longer ask, why would they lie about something so small? Because you already know they lie because it's how they survive. Because truth requires accountability, and they have no intention of being held accountable. And here's the truth. You don't need a liar to admit they lied in order to walk away. You don't need a liar to validate your pain in order to heal. You just need to decide that your peace is worth more than their performance. You may feel tempted to help them change, to give one more chance, to wait for the honesty you deserve. But ask yourself, not do they feel sorry, but do they stop? Because real remorse leads to real change. And if there's no change, there was no remorse. Only delay, only control, only repetition. In Stoicism, truth is not negotiable. It's not a matter of preference. It's the bedrock of virtue. And when you surround yourself with lies, you begin to absorb the chaos. Your mind becomes foggy. Your values begin to warp. And slowly you drift from yourself. Epictetus reminds us, keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. The liar doesn't call forth your best. They keep you busy proving what's obvious. They keep you chasing clarity in a maze they built. So the Stoic response? Exit the maze. Not with drama, not with blame, with finality. You don't owe a liar your loyalty. You don't owe them your explanations. And you certainly don't owe them your silence. But most of all, you don't owe them your confusion. Take back your clarity, your voice, your truth, and speak it, not to them, but to yourself, because the one person who must never doubt you is you. If this message speaks to your experience, if you've ever wrestled with falsehood wrapped in charm, you are not alone. At True Stoic Way, we don't offer easy answers. We offer strong questions. We don't chase external approval, we pursue inner peace. And in a world flooded with noise, we train our minds to hear what's real. Subscribe if you're ready to walk that path, not just to hear the truth, but to live it. This concludes our 5-part series. Let's recap. 1. The charming illusionist, who flatters to manipulate. 2. The empathy void, who hears you but never listens. 3. The manipulator, who twists guilt into a leash. 4. The invisible cage builder, who isolates without ever raising their voice. 5. The professional liar, who reshapes reality with every word. Each one wears a mask. Each one erodes your peace slowly. But now you see, and seeing is the first step to walking away, with wisdom, with calm, with your peace intact. Stay clear, stay grounded, and above all, stay one step ahead. So now you see them, the illusionist, the void, the manipulator, the cage builder, the liar. 5 faces, 5 patterns, 5 quiet storms that steal your clarity before they ever raise their voice. But now, the fog is lifting. You see what you once questioned. You feel what you once explained away. And that is the beginning of freedom. But let's be honest, there is a moment after clarity that feels empty. You've seen through the lies. You've recognized the patterns. You know who they are. Now what? You may feel the urge to confront them, to force accountability, to gather the proof, make the case, show them what they did. But that isn't the Stoic path. The Stoic doesn't chase closure. The Stoic chooses peace over performance. Marcus Aurelius said, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. So don't waste time trying to convince someone of the harm they have caused, especially when they benefit from denying it. Just walk, clear, unshaken, done. You don't need to prove you were right. You don't need to explain why you're leaving. You don't need to justify your boundaries to anyone who refuses to honor them. What you need is to trust what you've seen, what you've felt, what you now know, that not everyone who smiles at you means you well, that not everyone who calls you friend sees you as one, that not every relationship was built on love. Some were built on leverage, and above all, not everyone who seemed kind was good, and not everyone you trusted deserved your heart. The Stoic response isn't cruelty, it's clarity, not reaction, but decision, not noise, but direction. Because revenge feels satisfying for a moment, but clarity lasts, and your peace is not worth trading for temporary justice. You may wonder, will they ever realize what they did? Will they miss me? Will they change? But those are the wrong questions. The right question is, who do I want to be now that I see clearly? You are not here to fix broken people who choose to stay broken. You are not here to be a mirror for someone who refuses to look at themselves. You are not here to shrink so someone else can feel big. You are here to live with virtue, to cultivate wisdom, practice courage, defend your peace, and protect the space within you where calm lives. Seneca reminds us, as is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. So ask yourself, what kind of life are you building when you stay entangled with people who drain your peace? A life of defense, of exhaustion, of explanations, or a life of presence, of intention, of depth? You don't owe your time to anyone who doesn't value it. You don't owe your loyalty to anyone who abuses it. You don't owe your softness to someone who weaponizes it. Let me be clear. Leaving doesn't mean you failed. It means you finally honored the truth. Letting go doesn't make you cold. It means you stopped clinging to what never loved you back. Saying enough doesn't make you harsh. It makes you whole. And that wholeness, that calm, clear shower, sacred space, is what the Stoics called true freedom. This is where your work begins, not in explaining yourself to others, but in becoming unshakable within yourself. Not in proving your worth to them, but in remembering it for yourself. Not in showing them the truth, but in refusing to abandon it. If this journey resonated with you, if you felt seen in these words, if even one part of your heart whispered, "That's me," then you're not alone, and you don't have to walk this road in silence. This is True Stoic Way, not a place of shallow motivation, not a channel full of noise and drama, but a path for those who want to live with eyes open, with values anchored, and with peace intact. If you've made it this far, you're already walking that path. So I invite you to continue it with us. Subscribe, not to follow a trend, but to stay rooted in what you already feel deep down. That this world will always test your limits, so make sure you are the one who defines them. You don't need to become bitter. You don't need to shut down. You don't need to fight darkness with more darkness. You just need to stand, still, clear, and true. Final reminder, clarity is your compass, peace is your shield, and your boundaries are your quiet, powerful way of saying, this is where I end and where I begin. Let them test you, let them push, let them mislabel you, but never let them define you. Stay wise, stay steady, stay free. This is the True Stoic Way, and you're ready to walk it.